On my 18th birthday, my grandfather laid out the profiles of several eligible men in front of me and asked me to choose one for an engagement. Without hesitation, I chose William from the White family. Everyone present was stunned. After all, everyone in the circle knew that Isabella, the daughter of the Brown family, had long been deeply in love with the eldest young master, Alexander. She even publicly declared to the old man at her coming age party that she would marry no one but Alexander. In my previous life, I married Alexander as I had wished, but just 3 days after our wedding, he couldn't wait to tell me that he wanted to take my stepsister, Olivia, under his wing as well. My mother was so furious that she directly married Olivia to my father's favorite student. Alexander was convinced that I was the one who had meddled in it and hated me with a passion. Since then, he has been involved in one scandal after another, and every one of his female companions bore a certain resemblance to Olivia. He indulged those women in humiliating me in all sorts of ways. In the end, on the day he inherited the family business, I was poisoned to death. Reborn in this life, I decided to stay far away from him and fulfill his relationship with Olivia. But unexpectedly, as soon as the news of the engagement came out, he lost control on the spot and openly opposed this marriage. 1. When I came out of the chairman's office, I didn't expect to run into Alexander. He had just finished an important company meeting and was surrounded by a group of senior executives and industry elites. When they saw me, that group of people immediately burst into laughter and started teasing me one after another. Isabella, are you chasing General Manager Alexander all the way to the company headquarters? If Brown knew that his daughter was being so persistent, he'd probably be so angry that his high blood pressure would flare up and he'd directly take a sick leave. Right? Alexander looked at me with a look of disgust and said in a cold tone, "Did you come to the company because you want my dad to directly order us to get engaged? I'm warning you. Without my consent, stop acting crazy." I was all too familiar with that look of disgust in his eyes. I suppressed the pain in my heart and calmly said, "The chairman called me here. He's going to hold an important coming age ceremony for me. And it has nothing to do with you." As soon as I finished speaking, there was an immediate uproar around me. Coming age ceremony? I knew why they were so shocked. It was because the founder of the company, Alexander's grandfather, had left a will stating that the fiancée chosen by the youngest daughter of the Brown family at her coming age ceremony would be the next heir to the company. My words just now were tantamount to announcing that the company's successor had been decided. After the shock, everyone congratulated Alexander one after another. It seems that it won't be long before we have to start calling General Manager Alexander the chairman. A look of pride appeared on Alexander's face. But when he looked at me, his tone was full of mockery. "Isabella, you've been chasing me for so many years. And now you've finally gotten your wish. You must be overjoyed. Right?" As he spoke, he stepped closer to me and whispered in my ear, "I won't make the same mistake again. So there's one thing you have to promise if I'm going to consider marrying you. On the day we get married, I'll make Olivia my assistant and let her join the company with you." He paused, and his tone became even lower. My heart sank suddenly, and I looked at him in disbelief. So, he was reborn too. Before I could respond, a delicate voice came from behind me. "Sister." It was my stepsister, Olivia. She walked over gracefully, having chaussée voyant sécheur, looking extremely frail. Her face was pale, and Alexander immediately rushed over with a look of concern and carefully supported her. "Olivia, why did you come to the company?" Olivia covered her mouth and leaned against his arms. Her voice tinged with sobs. "Today is sister's coming age ceremony. I couldn't not come. It's just that I'm not feeling well and I have a bit of a cold. I hope sister won't be angry with me." Hearing this, Alexander gave me a fierce glare. "How could you be so heartless? For a stupid coming age ceremony, you had to call someone who's sick." After saying that, he directly picked Olivia up in his arms. "Olivia, go to my office first. I'll call the doctor to examine you." Before leaving, he didn't forget to warn me coldly, "Isabella, you better reflect on yourself. If you're this arrogant again, we'll put off our marriage for a while." After saying that, he held Olivia and left quickly without looking back. At my grand birthday banquet, Alexander arrived late, with Olivia in his arms, looking as if they had just been fooling around. Most of the guests at the scene had already left, and only a group of wealthy second-generation brats, who liked to watch the fun, were left, waiting for me to make a fool of myself. Olivia's hair was messy. Her eyes were blurred, and her cheeks were flushed. It was obvious that something was wrong with her. Alexander had a look of pride on his face, and there was a fresh hickey on his neck. Anyone with eyes could tell what the two of them had been up to just now, and they were all waiting for me to lose my temper. In the past, I would have flipped the table and thrown a tantrum, crying and making a scene. But now, I just calmly picked up the teacup and took a sip. Alexander had already protected Olivia behind him, waiting for me to make a scene so that he could scold me. Unexpectedly, I acted as if it had nothing to do with me. I seemed not to have seen them and gently put down the teacup. He frowned, looking a bit annoyed. But then, as if he had thought of something, he laughed and said, "Isabella, are you pretending to be a lady because you're afraid that I'll call off the marriage? Good. If you want to be my Alexander's fiancée, you have to be more magnanimous. By the way, today is your birthday." As he spoke, he took out a cheap pendant from his pocket. Just as he was about to hand it to me, Olivia snatched it away. "Brother Alexander, this pendant is so shiny," Olivia said in a coquettish voice. Alexander immediately said, "Do you like it, Olivia? Then it's for you." Olivia glanced at me hypocritically, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help but turn up. "How can I be so cheeky? This is the gift you were going to give to sister. What will sister do if I take it?" Alexander glanced at me disapprovingly. "Her? That's easy." He casually took a disposable plastic fork from the tray of a passing waiter and threw it in front of me, saying in a contemptuous tone, "This is for you." And he smiled at Olivia and said, Anyway, she likes whatever I give her." The fork knocked over the drink in front of me, and the liquid splashed all over me. Those who were watching the fun around were all snickering behind their hands. Looking at the fork in front of me, I suddenly felt it was tasteless. In the past, I always pestered him for gifts. He bought me a plastic glue-injected bracelet for just a few dollars at a roadside stall, and I was so happy that I wore it every day. Everyone in the circle laughed at me, saying that even if Alexander gave me garbage, I would still treat it as a treasure. I took a deep breath, not wanting to ruin my own birthday banquet. I returned the fork to the waiter and said softly, "The young master is just joking with you. Go down." The waiter was so scared that he quickly stepped back. Seeing that I was so indifferent, Alexander was instead unhappy and his face darkened. He pulled Olivia and sat down next to me, and the two of them flirted with each other as if no one else was around. While being affectionate with Olivia, he secretly observed my reaction. I just felt extremely bored and stood up, ready to leave. Seeing this, Alexander grabbed me and asked triumphantly, "What's the matter? Are you jealous already? Isabella, you have to get used to it early. In the future, I won't just have you. Being jealous is a big taboo in wealthy families." I quickly shook off his hand and said coldly, "There should be a distinction between men and women. Please behave yourself, young master." He was taken aback for a moment, and then suddenly laughed. "What are you up to this time? We're about to get engaged soon. You're already mine. Can't I even touch you?" I was so angry that I laughed. If my uncle hadn't told me not to reveal my choice yet, I would have slapped him hard. Now, I could only ask him in return, "Alexander, how can you be so sure that I chose you?" He was stunned for a moment, and then burst into laughter. The people around seemed unable to hold it in any longer and also burst into laughter. Alexander laughed so hard that tears came out. While laughing, he said, "Leaving aside the fact that everyone in the whole circle knows that you will marry no one but me. Among these eligible young men, the third one is already married, and the fourth one has a marriage contract with a wealthy heiress from abroad. Do you want to be their mistress? As for the second one, he's not in good health. Maybe. Do you want to be a widow? So, Isabella. Tell me. Besides me. Who else can you marry? 3. Everyone was waiting for me to make a fool of myself and wanted to know how I would respond. My uncle's reminder flashed through my mind. And I suddenly lost the interest in arguing with him. Anyway, heading till Station. It wouldn't be long before everyone would know who I was going to marry. On the way home, Olivia and I were in the same car. She looked at my dress that was splashed with the drink and laughed heartily. So what if you can become the president's wife in the future? If you can't win Alexander's heart, you're not even as good as a little assistant. Right? Without Alexander's backing. She finally tore off that pitiful disguise. Looking at her smug face, I remembered my previous life. My mother forced her to marry my father's assistant. Although that man came from an ordinary family, he later achieved great success in his career and rose steadily. Out of gratitude for my father's support, he obeyed Olivia in everything. She lived a much more comfortable life than I, the president's wife. In this life, I would never let my mother interfere in her marriage again. I couldn't wait to see what kind of end she would meet. Thinking of this, I ignored her sarcasm and just said inferiorly, "Then I wish you and Alexander a long and happy marriage." She was taken aback, and her arrogant demeanor instantly deflated like a punctured balloon. I didn't pay any more attention to her and got out of the car directly. At my uncle's birthday banquet, I went to offer my congratulations with my mother. In order to avoid those young men who came to the banquet, I found a quiet corner in the garden to rest alone. Unexpectedly, I ran into Olivia here. I heard that Alexander had been sending her all kinds of luxury goods these days. Now she was decked out in jewels from head to toe, and dressed more ostentatiously than I, the legitimate daughter. When she saw me, she swayed over and said coquettously, "Sister, do you think my dress is pretty? This was specially tailored for me by the designer that Brother Alexander hired. It's a limited edition in the world. Only one piece." I completely ignored her. But she kept showing off non-stop. Brother Alexander also said that the wedding dress has to be the top -notch one. He promised that mine will definitely be shinier and more eye-catching than yours. Just as I was about to tell her to shut up, my eyes were drawn to the sparkle on her wrist, and my heart seemed to be gripped tightly by an invisible hand. That bracelet was exactly the same as the one my grandmother had left me before she passed away. I liked the RUYI pattern, and my grandmother specially found a skilled craftsman to carve the bracelet into the pattern of a RUYI. I loved it so much that I couldn't bear to wear it myself. Just as I was about to take a closer look, Olivia suddenly covered her face and screamed, "Sister! What are you doing? I know you're jealous that Brother Alexander dotes on me. But you can't hit me." My wrist was firmly grabbed by someone. A cold voice came from behind me. "Isabella! What are you doing?" Alexander glared at me furiously. "What on earth are you going crazy about now?" I shook off his hand and stared straight at Olivia, asking, "Where did you get that bracelet on your wrist?" A trace of panic flashed across Olivia's face. But seeing Alexander standing beside her, ready to stand up for her at any moment, she immediately straightened her back. "Brother Alexander gave it to me." "You're lying. That bracelet was specially customized for me by my grandmother. It's unique in the whole world. Scarlett, go and take it off her." My assistant Scarlett, upon hearing my instruction, was about to step forward to take the bracelet from Olivia's wrist. Unexpectedly, Alexander slapped her to the ground with a single blow. "You bitch! Who told you to touch Olivia?" Like an enraged lion, he pointed at my nose and roared, "Isabella! I really didn't expect that in order to break up me and Olivia, you would stoop to such despicable means to smear her. I, Alexander, am putting it bluntly today. This bracelet was personally given to Olivia by me." For after hearing his words and looking at the blood at the corner of Scarlett's mouth, I was filled with rage. This jade bracelet was given to me by my grandmother, and Alexander had clearly seen it before. Now, he was actually twisting the truth to protect Olivia and even laid hands on my people. "Alexander, you hit my assistant," which is equivalent to slapping me in the face. I had never lost my temper with him before, and he was intimidated by my sharp gaze. He instinctively wanted to explain. Olivia pretended to wipe the corner of her eye, and with a wronged look, she took off the jade bracelet and handed it to me. Sister. If you like it, just take it. Don't be angry with Brother Alexander anymore. She hypocritically tried to stuff the jade bracelet into my hand, but deliberately let it slip. The jade bracelet fell to the ground with a snap and broke into several pieces. I was so angry that my whole body was shaking. I raised my hand to slap her, but was pushed away by Alexander. Isabella, don't you dare hurt Olivia again. Look at you now. You're acting like a shrew. He roared. I was pushed so hard that I staggered and fell to the ground in a sorry state. Olivia leaned delicately into Alexander's arms, and a triumphant sneer curled at the corner of her mouth. When Alexander saw me fall, a trace of panic flashed in his eyes, and he reached out to help me up, but his hand was tightly grasped by Olivia. With tears in her eyes, she sobbed, "Brother Alexander. My heart hurts so much." Alexander immediately picked her up nervously and shouted anxiously, "What's wrong with you? Call the doctor right away." Colleagues passing by saw the farce here and stopped one after another, pointing at me and whispering, "Isn't that the daughter of General Manager Brown? She's actually being jealous with the illegitimate daughter of the family because of a man. She's really bringing shame to the Brown family." Alexander stared at me fiercely, his face turning pale with anger. "Isabella, have you had enough of this nonsense? Hurry up and apologize to Olivia. You crazy woman. You don't deserve to be my fiancée at all." The group of wealthy second-generation brats behind him burst into laughter. "Miss Isabella, if you're so jealous, when our general manager Alexander has several wives and concubines in the future, won't you be so angry that you'll die?" In the midst of the harsh laughter, Alexander paced up to me, his tone full of certainty. He looked down at me and said slowly, "I heard that my dad is going to announce our marriage today. If you still want to marry me, you'd better be obedient. After the news is announced, you can beg my dad to allow Olivia to marry into the White family with you and let her be my mistress. This way, I'll be magnanimous and forgive you this time. And you can also get a good reputation for being virtuous and generous. It's a win-minus-win situation." I looked at him in disbelief, although I had long known what kind of person he was. But hearing these words, I was still shocked by his shamelessness. Seeing that I was silent, he thought I had acquiesced and said triumphantly, "If my dad agrees to this, I'll consider preparing the same betrothal gifts for you as for Olivia. So you won't lose face when you marry me on the same day as Olivia." He looked as if he had me completely figured out and was even more convinced that he was the future head of the White family. Scarlett ran over crying and tried to help me up. Colleagues around were all covering their mouths, waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Just as the farce was escalating, a furious rebuke rang out like a thunderclap out of the blue. "What the hell are you doing?" Everyone turned around and saw William and Johnson walking towards them. William quickly stepped forward and carefully helped me up. Looking at my soiled dress, he asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Johnson, with a serious expression, announced loudly, "The chairman has something to say." When Alexander and that group of wealthy young men heard this, they knew that the news of the marriage announcement was coming. This group of people were all beaming with joy and gathered together, waiting to hear the good news. Alexander glanced at me triumphantly, and his eyes seemed to be saying, "You're doomed to lose." He didn't forget to threaten me in a low voice, "Don't forget what I told you just now. Hurry up and beg my dad to let Olivia marry in with you." A wealthy second-generation beside him had already quietly congratulated Alexander in advance. "Congratulations, General Manager Alexander, on your upcoming inheritance of the family business and your marriage to two daughters of the Brown family. It's a double blessing. Truly something to celebrate." However, this joyful atmosphere didn't last long. The chairman said that Isabella, the daughter of the Brown family, is both talented and beautiful, with excellent moral character, and she can be married to William. A propitious day will be chosen to hold the wedding. Everyone present was stunned. It turned out that the marriage announcement made by the chairman was about me and William. 5 When William's name echoed in the banquet hall, Alexander suddenly looked up and said sharply, "Is there a mistake?" Johnson glanced at him and said sternly, "The chairman has already spoken. It was clearly written in the document that Isabella, the daughter of the Brown family, was engaged to the second young master, William. Everyone looked at each other in dismay and didn't dare to make a sound. After Johnson finished reading, he looked at me amiably. Miss Isabella. You heard it, right? Unexpectedly, hadn't fulfilled my expression. Alexander was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He jumped up and shouted impossible. He snatched the document from Johnson's hand and flipped through it in disbelief, muttering as he read, "There must be a mistake." He suddenly looked at me. His eyes filled with almost crazy hope, and asked eagerly, "Isabella, there must be a mistake, right? You clearly chose me that day. It must be that Dad is old and confused and mistook me for the second brother. Is that right?" I just found it extremely ridiculous and replied coldly, "That's right. I chose William from the very beginning." Upon hearing this, William looked up in surprise, and a trace of disbelief flashed in his eyes. Alexander angrily threw the document on the ground. "You're lying!" Alexander roared hoarsely, completely losing his composure. "You love me. Everyone in the whole circle knows that. How could you possibly choose that sickly fellow? Dad must be out of his mind." With these words, he completely ignored the occasion and the consequences. When Johnson saw the document on the ground, his face turned pale with anger, and he quickly picked it up. He sternly rebuked the group of young men who were still standing there stupidly. "What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and take your eldest young master away." As if waking up from a dream, everyone quickly got up and tried to drag Alexander away. Alexander still didn't give up and shouted hoarsely at me, "Isabella, go and explain to Dad that you made a mistake. You clearly chose me." Several people quickly rushed forward, covered Alexander's mouth tightly, and dragged him away in a flurry. After the commotion subsided, Johnson handed the document to me with a beaming smile. "Miss Isabella, the chairman has instructed that at the upcoming dinner party, he will personally announce this happy event. You should keep this in mind." I looked at the document and knew in my heart. My father said he would announce the marriage in public. In fact, he wanted to take this opportunity to tell everyone that William was the future leader of the White family. At my father's birthday banquet, celebrities from all walks of life, relatives, and friends were all present. Looking around, I didn't see that annoying guy Alexander. However, William happened to be sitting opposite me. Across the crowd, he was also looking at me. The moment I saw him, my eyes turned red. I remembered that in my previous life, I died on the day Alexander inherited the family business. At the ceremony, William held my body and mercilessly thrust a dagger into Alexander's chest. He said calmly and resolutely, "I should have known better than to let her marry you in the first place." Then, he was also shot to death in a hail of bullets. At that time, as a soul, I was shocked when I saw this scene. It was widely rumored throughout the city that William, the second young master of the White family, was extremely handsome and intelligent. Unfortunately, talent is often envied by heaven. He suffered from a hidden illness and had been living in seclusion in his own villa all year round, rarely showing up in public. So we had never met before. Then why on earth did he go to such lengths? In this life, I think I will find the answer. 6. After several rounds of drinks, my father called William's name. The second young master, who had been living in seclusion in the old mansion and almost isolated from the world, slowly got up and walked in front of everyone for the first time. Johnson stepped forward and read out the engagement document to him. William took it without the slightest hesitation and expressed his gratitude. The guests present were talking among themselves. Everyone was certain that the young lady of the Brown family was in love with the eldest young master, and it was a foregone conclusion that he would inherit the family business. No one expected such a turn of events. Some people even whispered that this second young master's health was probably very frail, and he might pass away one day. Why on earth did the eldest young lady of the Brown family choose him? Just as everyone was talking, Alexander broke free from the restraint and stumbled in from the outside. He had already lost his previous arrogant demeanor and knelt down in front of his father, pleading pitifully, "Dad, please take back the decision to cancel the engagement." When Alexander's mother saw that her eldest son had actually openly contradicted her, She was so angry that she quickly called the security guards. The eldest young master must be delirious from illness. Hurry up and take him away. Alexander knelt on the ground and refused to get up. His voice full of grief. Dad. I've been in love with the young lady of the Brown family since we were children and made a private vow to marry each other. Please fulfill our wish. My father's gaze was like a knife, staring straight at me. And his voice was low. Isabella. What do you think about this? I walked forward gracefully and said calmly, Dad. I don't understand why Big Brother said such things. I've always regarded him as my elder brother, and have never had any feelings beyond that. The young lady of the Brown family, he mentioned, is probably my sister Olivia. Right? Alexander's pupils shrank suddenly. And he stared at me intently. His voice changing pitch. Impossible. Isabella. You know in your heart that the young lady of the Brown family I'm talking about has always been you. He suddenly realized something and eagerly tried to explain. I see. You're still angry with me. I didn't speak up for you that day. So you want to marry William to get back at me, don't you? I looked at him coldly. Young master. Please be careful with your words. The person I like has always been the second. Young master. As soon as I said these words, Alexander went crazy and rushed towards me, trying to grab me. And his face was contorted. Isabella. You can't do this. How can you change your heart? Before he could touch me, he was blocked by William. William was tall and stood in front of me like a wall. Looking at his broad back, I suddenly remembered my previous life. When he was shot by a hail of bullets and fell to the ground, he still held me tightly in his arms, as if he wanted to use his body to shield me from all harm. My eyes were filled with mist, and tears couldn't stop streaming down my face. William protected me behind him, stared at Alexander, and his voice was as cold as ice. Brother. You've crossed the line. Alexander's eyes were ablaze with anger. And he stared at William. Who do you think you are to lecture me? Presumptuous. My father's voice was full of authority. And the guest retreated to the side in fear. Drag the eldest young master away from me. From today on. Without my permission. He is not allowed to step out of the house even half a step. Alexander was forcibly taken away. And his desperate cries still echoed. Isabella. Tell Dad that you love me. Don't do anything stupid. I ignored him and turned back to my seat. 7 overnight. Rumors spread throughout the city like wildfire. Everyone was talking about how the eldest young master had actually openly contradicted the old man for the sake of the eldest young lady of the Brown family. It seemed that he had learned that the eldest young lady of the Brown family had chosen the second young master, and wanted to use that illegitimate daughter to anger the eldest young lady. I ignored these gossips because the wedding date between me and William was set. And it was just a month away. I was busy preparing my wedding dress. But unexpectedly, William came to my place. When he saw me, he stammered and hesitated for a long time before finally opening his mouth. He said that if I didn't want to, he could go and beg the old man to cancel the marriage. I looked at him in surprise, not understanding why he would think that way. He looked at me seriously. You were clearly crying on the old man's birthday banquet that day. I was taken aback for a moment before I remembered that on that day, standing behind William, I couldn't help but shed tears when I thought of him protecting my body until his death in my previous life. I thought I had wiped away my tears quickly, and no one had noticed. But unexpectedly, he had seen it. And he had mistakenly thought that I was crying because of Alexander. I had no choice but to explain I wasn't crying because of Alexander. Then what was it for? I had a nightmare. In the dream, you risked your life to save me. When I saw you again, I was overcome with emotions and couldn't control myself. His ears turned red instantly. Do you really want to marry me? He asked. I nodded firmly. He couldn't help but laugh. And then took out a bracelet from his sleeve and handed it to me. The original one couldn't be repaired. So I had someone make a new one for you. It turned out that he had also heard about what happened that day. I carefully examined the jade bracelet in my hand. It was very similar to the one my grandmother gave me. But it was even more translucent and sparkling. To find such a piece of jade and have the bracelet made into the shape of a RUYI. He must have put in a lot of thought. After thinking for a while, I took off the jade pendant that I had always worn around my neck and placed it in his hand. This jade pendant was originally passed down to me by my mother, and was meant for me to give to my future husband. In my previous life, I gave it to Alexander, but he smashed it to pieces. In this life, William clenched the jade pendant in his palm. His eyes resolute. Isabella, I swear that I will protect it well in this life. And I will also protect you. The next day, having fulfilled my exhaustion, countless betrothal gifts poured into my home like a flowing stream. On the third day, my father looked at the courtyard that was already filled with betrothal gifts and kept shaking his head. This second young master is too impatient. He's not steady at all. My mother gave my father a reproachful glance. You don't you understand? William is afraid that our Isabella will be snatched away. So he's extremely anxious. In the corner, Olivia looked at the betrothal gifts piled up in the courtyard, and a trace of envy flashed in her eyes. But when she saw me, hatred filled her eyes. Taking advantage of no one's attention, Olivia crept up to me, her eyes shining with jealousy and hatred. Sister is really amazing. You actually want to use the second young master to provoke Brother Alexander. It's a pity that Brother Alexander doesn't like you at all. No matter how much you do, it's all in vain. Everyone knows that the second young master is just a figurehead. Sister, you're going to marry a useless person. After she finished speaking, she laughed triumphantly. Before her words even faded away, and she could fully revel in her triumph, a servant came running in frantically, gasping for breath and shouting, "Miss, something big has happened. You'd better go out and take a look. The eldest young master has come with betrothal gifts." Etched rushed to the door in a hurry, and saw that somehow Alexander had broken free from his family's control and, with an endless stream of betrothal gifts, had grandly blocked the entrance of my house. The surrounding area was crowded with neighbors watching the commotion, chatting and speculating about who I would ultimately choose. Before I could say anything, Olivia suddenly pushed me aside and pounced on Alexander like a koala. "Brother Alexander, you've finally come. I haven't been able to eat or sleep these days without seeing you. I'm almost going crazy." Unexpectedly, Alexander pushed her away. Olivia was caught off guard and plopped down on the ground, looking extremely embarrassed. Alexander completely ignored her and walked straight towards me. His eyes filled with genuine affection. "Isabella, I'm here to marry you." I just felt a wave of nausea, my stomach churning. "Alexander, are you mistaken? Isn't the person you're asking to marry your half-minus sister Olivia?" "Not me?" He took a step forward eagerly. I was prepared and had the security guard stop him to prevent him from touching me. "No. Isabella, listen to my explanation. In my heart, you will always be the most important. No one can compare to you." I sneered, a mocking smile curving the corners of my mouth. "That's not what you said before. I was just saying that out of anger. I just wanted to use Olivia to provoke you a bit." He looked so sincere. If I hadn't learned the painful lessons of my previous life, I might have believed his lies. When Olivia heard these words, she forgot about the grievance of being pushed to the ground and quickly got up, grabbing Alexander's arm. Tears streamed down her face like beads off a broken string. "Brother Alexander, how could you do this?" Olivia's voice trembled. "You clearly promised that you would marry me with all the proper ceremonies as your legitimate wife and would never let me suffer any grievances. Get out of my way." Alexander shook her off violently, his tone full of disgust. He glared at Olivia. "If it weren't for your meddling, how could Isabella be so angry as to marry that short-lipped guy?" Even now, Alexander still naively thought that I chose William just to spite him. It was truly ridiculous. He unceremoniously pushed Olivia aside again, took out a jade bracelet from his pocket, and held it up in front of me like he was presenting a treasure. "Isabella, look," Alexander said eagerly, his voice carrying a hint of seeking credit. "I found out what happened to that bracelet the other day. That vicious woman Olivia stole yours and deliberately smashed it. I specially had a new one customized for you. Take a look. Isn't it exactly the same as the original one?" I glanced at the bracelet. It was worlds apart from the one my grandmother left me. Not only was the craftsmanship rough, But the pattern and shape of the bracelet were also ugly. It was obvious that it had been hastily made at the last minute. Ignoring the stop of the security guards, he forced the inferior jade bracelet into my hand. "Dear Isabella, accept this bracelet and stop being angry. Go and tell your family to cancel the engagement and marry me. Okay?" Without hesitation, I threw the bracelet to the ground with all my might, shattering it into pieces. "Alexander, listen carefully. I, Isabella, don't like you. And I will never marry you in this life. Everyone here has seen and heard it today. If you dare to pester me any further, you'll just be bringing shame upon yourself. Please leave." The neighbors who were watching the farce had a clear understanding of the situation, and started whispering and discussing among themselves. "This is really disappointing. It's just like the old saying goes. You don't know how to cherish something until you've lost it." At first, she gave her heart and soul to him. But he didn't care. Now that she's going to marry someone else, he's clinging to her like a lapdog and still hopes she'll turn back. There's no such good thing in the world. Exactly. It's too late. He deserves it. I instructed the security guards to close the gate tightly and ignore him no matter how much he shouted outside. Later, the maid at home quietly told me that Alexander kept shouting outside until his voice went hoarse. It wasn't until it was pitch dark that he couldn't hold on any longer and fainted that he was carried back. Olivia sobbed all the way and followed behind him. When they reached the door, Alexander wouldn't let her in, and she was driven back. After hearing what the maid said, I learned that Olivia was driven back again. She's kneeling in the ancestral hall reflecting on her actions now. After hearing this, I remained expressionless. I didn't even want to mention these to people now. Looking at the mountain of betrothal gifts piled up in the courtyard, I felt a bit of a headache. I really hoped William wouldn't send any more. If he did, my home would really turn into a warehouse. 9 On the day of the wedding ceremony, the morning sun bathed the earth, and the sound of the salute cannons was deafening. William had poured all his efforts into this wedding, just to give me an unforgettable memory. The luxurious motorcade stretched for miles, extending from my home all the way to the luxurious hotel in the city's center. Along the way, heading for Feldland Session, there were flowers and blessings everywhere. I was dressed in a magnificent wedding dress, sitting in the wedding car, holding the candy that William secretly handed to me. And my heart was filled with sweetness. This was the second time I was walking down the aisle. Walking on the same road. My mood was completely different from that in my previous life. Once, when I was sitting in the wedding car, I was filled with unease, afraid that Alexander would change his mind halfway and make me lose face. Now, I just wanted to finish the ceremony quickly, go back to our new home, and take a good look at William. Unexpectedly, halfway through the journey, the wedding car suddenly stopped. The sound of the salute cannons also stopped abruptly, and there was a deathly silence all around. Just as I was wondering what was going on, my assistant opened the car door and whispered in my ear, "Miss, Alexander is standing in the middle of the road in a suit. It looks like he's going to try to stop the wedding." I was immediately stunned. William and I were legally registered, and Alexander actually wanted to openly try to stop the wedding? He was simply crazy. William also got out of the car. He walked beside me, his voice low and gentle. "Stay in the car obediently. Don't be afraid. Leave the rest to me." His voice was calm and gentle, making me feel extremely at ease. I nodded slightly. Then, let out a low sigh. I heard Alexander's roar, "Isabella, come back with me. Let's go and talk to your parents and make things clear. The person you should be marrying today is me." I could hardly believe my ears. I had clearly made my position clear to him that day. How could he still be so persistent and difficult to get rid of? "Alexander, this is a blatant provocation. Have you thought about the consequences? Get out of my way. You sickly fellow. You're not worthy of Isabella at all." I heard the sound of a physical altercation with horror. Someone around exclaimed, and someone wonder who shouted, "There's blood." Worried that William might be injured, I quickly got out of the car and ran to his side, anxiously looking him up and down. "Are you hurt?" Behind me, Alexander's voice trembled. "Isabella, I'm the one who's injured. And you actually care about him? I turned around and glared at him, scolding him coldly. Have you had enough of this nonsense? He's my husband. If I don't care about him, should I care about you? Looking at my indifferent expression, Alexander's face instantly turned ashen. Olivia suddenly appeared out of nowhere and clung tightly to Alexander. Brother Alexander. You promised to marry me. You can't go back on your word. Alexander kicked her away violently. Get lost. Don't touch me. Olivia was kicked to the ground. She clutched her stomach. Her expression pained. Someone suddenly gasped and pointed at the area under Olivia. Oh no. There's blood. Could she be having a miscarriage? Olivia slumped to the ground, crying pitifully. Brother Alexander. There's your child in my belly. You can't be so heartless. Alexander's face turned deathly pale. You're talking nonsense. We only had a relationship once. How could you be pregnant? He covered his bleeding arm and eagerly tried to explain. Isabella. Don't listen to her nonsense. She'll do anything to marry into my family. After saying that, he pleaded in a low voice. Isabella. I already know I was wrong. Do you really have to be so heartless? Will you come back with me? I swear that I will treat you wholeheartedly in this life. William's cold gaze swept over, and the bodyguards immediately stepped forward to subdue Alexander. I was really too lazy to entangle with him any further. So I softly said to William, hand him over to my parents. Don't miss the auspicious time. When Alexander heard my words, his face turned as pale as a corpse, and he let the bodyguards take him away. Fortunately, having fulfilled my instruction, Alexander's farce didn't affect the progress of the wedding. I got back into the wedding car, and the sound of the salute cannon rang out again. Later, I heard that Alexander had been severely lectured by my father and was confined to the house again. On our wedding night, William and I drank the nuptial cup of wine, and he gently helped me take off my cumbersome jewelry. After thinking for a while, I finally asked, we've never met before. Why are you so good to me? His hands paused slightly, and his voice was low and gentle. We have met before. But you've forgotten. I looked at him in surprise. Met? Where? He smiled and gently tapped my nose. Don't you remember? That little boy. You used to go and talk to him every day. Goodness. It suddenly dawned on me. The little boy I accidentally met when I got lost in the amusement park as a child turned out to be him. He was thin and his face had an unhealthy pallor back then. Like a small animal easily startled. He looked at me pitifully, leaning against the window. I eagerly asked him for the way out, but he just gently shook his head, indicating that he had never been out of that place either. Then, let out a low sigh. He called an aunt and asked her to send me back safely. Later, I learned that he couldn't go out because of his poor health at that time and could only lie there every day, passing the time. I thought he was so pitiful. So I went to chat with him every day and brought all my strange little toys to him. But later, I met Alexander and started revolving around him all day long. And I never went to see that little boy again. So that little boy was you? He nodded. I had just undergone a major surgery at that time, and my body was weakened. I couldn't go out. If it weren't for you coming to accompany me every day, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold on. Thinking about how I had ignored him later, I felt a twinge of guilt and some worry. Are you all better now? People outside say you're not in good health. Is the illness still not cured? He held my hand tightly, a smile spreading across his face. I've been cured for a long time. My father was worried that I would be attacked again, so he claimed that I was still suffering from a chronic illness. In fact, it was to protect me. I nodded, feeling relieved, remembering my previous life, when he held my body and was still able to skillfully repel those people with a sword. His movements were agile. There was no sign of illness at all. I had been suspicious then. As I was lost in thought, he suddenly lifted my face and made me look into his eyes. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking. He looked at me tenderly, quietly waiting for what I would say next. I tilted my head and placed a kiss on his lips. I'm thinking about how to go on our honeymoon with you. A month later, my assistant brought me news from home. The assistant said that Olivia had gone crazy since she had a miscarriage that day. She often grabs people outside and says that she is the president's wife and will be the chairman's wife in the future. Isabella. You've been chasing me for so many years. And now you've finally gotten your wish. You must be overjoyed, right? Unexpectedly, she actually ran away halfway. And she still hasn't been found. The assistant sighed and said, I'm afraid the chances of her being okay are slim. After a moment of silence, I idly played with the petals in my hand. But my thoughts had already drifted far away. It seemed that this was the end of Olivia's life in this lifetime. The secretary sent a message saying that the appointment letter for my husband William to take over as president would come down in a few days. But in the company, although it seemed calm on the surface, it was in an uproar underneath, with a lot of commotion. That day, my husband specifically told me not to go out before he went to the company. He didn't say it explicitly, but I knew very well that there were countless bodyguards hid and both openly and secretly outside our villa. It wasn't until the evening that the secretary rushed over to deliver the news. That's when I learned that Alexander actually wanted to seize power. He held his grandfather hostage and forced him to sign the equity transfer document. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled lay. William arrived in time and stopped him. Alexander violated the law and was detained by the relevant department. He also said that he wanted to see me. He said he had an earth-shattering secret that he had to tell me. So, I went to see him. The so-called earth-shattering secret he thought was just the same old story being reborn. This greatly disappointed me. His hair was messy. And his expression was manic. Isabella. Believe me. I really came back with the memories of my previous life. In the last life, we were husband and wife. You were the glorious president's wife. And I was the president who controlled everything. Our days were as sweet as honey. I looked at him. A mocking smile curving the corners of my mouth. Happiness? Alexander. Is the happiness she mentioned the kind that made me die in endless pain? Come on. Tell me. How exactly did I die in the previous life? You let on a low sigh. Of course. Died of old age. Even now. He was still lying. I sneered and mercilessly exposed him. Stop acting. I was poisoned to death by your precious mistress. His pupils shrank suddenly. And he stared at me intently. And he let out a despairing wail. So you're back too. I understand, Mel. No wonder you chose the second brother in this life. He seemed to have his soul sucked out in an instant and slumped down, losing the strength to struggle any further. I ignored him and turned to leave. That night, I received the news that Alexander had committed suicide. This news no longer stirred any emotions in my heart. I walked step by step towards the seat of the president's wife, ready to embrace my brand new life. In my previous life, Leo said he would take me to fulfill my dream of skydiving. He pushed me off from a height of 10,000 meters. As he pushed me off, he whispered 3 words in my ear. Go to hell. It was only then that I realized that this skydiving was all part of Leo's scheme. Leo had tampered with the parachute. He had bought a huge insurance policy for me. After my death, he took possession of everything I had. With that large sum of money, he lived a carefree and indulgent life. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to 3 days before the skydiving. This time, I will take my revenge. I will make Leo the target of public condemnation, and bring about his downfall and disgrace. I sat up abruptly in bed. The fear of falling from a height of 10,000 meters and being smashed to pieces still lingered around me. Leo's malicious gaze still remained in front of my eyes. I felt icy cold all over. And my back was instantly covered in cold sweat. Scarlett. What's wrong? Leo pushed open the door. His gaze was so gentle. And his words were filled with deep urgency. I looked into Leo's eyes. In the past, such a gaze would have made me feel warm. But after what happened in my previous life, I would no longer be easily deceived by Leo's outward appearance. I looked closely into Leo's eyes. Deeper in that gaze, I saw a hidden eagerness. I knew that this eagerness was not out of concern for me. Leo saw me as a means to defraud the insurance company. As a walking fortune. Have you been under too much work pressure recently? Leo leaned forward and reached out to stroke my hair. I instinctively shrank back. I saw Leo's hand, which had been suspended in mid-air. Look a bit awkward. A flash of viciousness passed through his pupils. But in the blink of an eye, it disappeared again. Scarlett. We're together every day. Why are you acting so distant from me? Did you have a nightmare? Well, I had a nightmare. In the dream, I was smashed to pieces. Upon hearing my words, for a moment, there was a trace of panic in Leo's eyes. But he quickly composed himself and then poured me a glass of warm water and handed it to me. You've just been too anxious recently. Scarlett. Didn't you always want to go skydiving before? I remember you even did a lot of special training for it. If you have a dream, you should make it come true. This time, I've made an appointment for you. In a couple of days, I'll take you skydiving. Jumping off from a high altitude. All your worries and pressures will disappear. As Leo spoke, he spread his arms wide. I sneered inwardly. The worries and pressures will indeed disappear. But so will my life. I didn't expose Leo immediately. Instead, I played along with his words. Skydiving? Will it be dangerous? Leo immediately dispelled my doubts. Scarlett. You know about it. There won't be any danger. And in my heart, your safety is above everything else. I found a professional company. The skydiving staff are all professionals. And they will ensure our safety. What disgusting words. I held back the urge to expose Leo. If I expose him now, Leo will just pretend to be misunderstood. It won't cause him any loss. I want Leo to be disgraced in front of everyone. To seeing that I agreed to the skydiving proposal, there was a hint of excitement on Leo's face. Scarlett. I knew you'd be willing to go with me. Don't worry. Before the skydiving, I'll make all the arrangements properly. You just have to have a good time. Leave the rest to me. I didn't say anything as I watched Leo hurry away. I knew that Leo was indeed in a hurry to make preparations. He was going to tamper with the parachute to make me die a violent death during the skydiving. He also had to prepare the insurance before the skydiving. And I also had things to arrange. I picked up the phone. Eva, can you do me a favor? I need to install a microsurveillance camera at home. My best friend Eva has some knowledge of electronic devices. Upon hearing my words, Eva was a bit puzzled. Scarlett. There's a risk of these surveillance cameras being leaked and monitored. You need to think it through. I know. I agreed to Eva's words. I've already made up my mind. Also, have until wide session. Please keep this a secret for me. Don't tell anyone. Especially Leo. Although she was puzzled, Eva still agreed to my request. We made an appointment to install the surveillance camera at the door today. At the same time, in the next 2 days, I will send Leo away. And then Eva will install it at home. After hanging up the phone, the corners of my mouth curved into a smile. In my previous life, in order not to arouse my suspicion, Leo had gone to great lengths to be nice to me these past few days. I know that Leo must have been really impatient these days. After his plan succeeds, Leo will definitely reveal his despicable true colors. Installing the surveillance camera is just the first step in making him disgraced. 3 After calling Eva, I picked up the glass of warm water placed on the bedside table. I examined the glass of water carefully. Just looking at it like this, there was nothing unusual about the water. But considering my experience in my previous life and Leo's conspiracy, I thought that my mental anxiety these past few days might also be related to Leo. Thinking about Leo's actions these past few days, the most common thing he said was, Scarlett, drink more water. It's good for your health. I found an empty bottle and poured the warm water into it. I sent the water in the bottle to a specialized agency for testing. If my suspicion is correct, there will be something wrong with this bottle of water. When I came back after finishing everything, it was already close to evening. Scarlett. You're back. You've worked hard. Leo was wearing an apron. And he had already prepared a table full of food. Try it. These are all for you. All your favorite dishes. In my previous life, I was deeply touched by Leo's attitude like this. My parents left me a substantial inheritance. I was also a senior executive in a listed company, with a high salary. Although Leo didn't have a job and couldn't earn money, But Leo was always willing to prepare a table full of food when I came home. He was willing to do all the household chores, such as washing clothes, doing the dishes, and cleaning the house. Once upon a time, I always thought that a man like Leo, who was so family-oriented, was a good man. It didn't matter if he couldn't earn money. I had money and could earn more. We could live our own little life. But now, I know, Leo has always had ambitions. It's just that in the past, he hid his ambitions well, and I never noticed anything amiss. I looked at the steaming dishes on the table. In the past, they would always make my mouth water. But now I have no interest at all. Who knows what he put in the food? Scarlett. What's wrong? Are the dishes I made not to your taste? Leo lowered his head and rubbed his hands, looking a bit aggrieved. In the past, this trick of his always worked on me. But I've decided that before the test results come out, I won't eat anything provided by Leo. It's not your fault. I've been busy for a long time today. I've already eaten outside. I noticed that Leo's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he smiled. It's okay. As long as you're full, Scarlett. For in the end, neither of us ate the food on the table. I went back to my room. And soon Leo knocked on the door. Scarlett. Are you busy? What's the matter? Leo pushed open the door and was holding a tray. On the tray were peeled fruits and a glass of warm water. Scarlett. I prepared some fruits for you. Eat some if you're hungry. And the warm water. It's good for your health to drink it while it's hot. Put it down. Scarlett. There's one more thing. Leo put down the tray and then took out an insurance contract from behind his back and casually placed it in front of me. This is the insurance that needs to be signed for the skydiving. Don't worry, Scarlett. This insurance is just a formality. The skydiving company requires signing the insurance before going skydiving. There won't be any accidents. I calmly took the insurance contract that Leo handed me. I didn't rush to look at the contents of the contract. Instead, I looked directly into Leo's eyes. Will there really be accidents during skydiving? Is it necessary to sign the insurance? Perhaps because of a guilty conscience. Leo instinctively avoided my gaze when faced with my stare. Look at what you're saying. How could there be an accident? This is just a formality. For activities like bungee jumping, insurance is also signed for those projects. Is that so? I curled the corners of my mouth, and there was a hint of mockery in my eyes. But Leo was completely unaware of all this. Scarlett. Would I harm you? Don't be afraid. If skydiving was prone to accidents, it would have been reported in the news already. The conditions are very mature now, and there won't be any accidents. Leo had said these words to me in my previous life as well. But at that time, I didn't take it too hard and didn't notice anything wrong. I just thought Leo was comforting me. But now that I've been reborn, I can sense the flustered attempt to cover up in Leo's words. Are you explaining to me? In front of me, Leo's body stiffened. But I didn't want to hear Leo's answer anymore. You should go back now. Leo looked up in surprise. Scarlett. Didn't we agree that I would bide here and take care of your daily life? I've been under a lot of pressure recently. I need to be alone and calm down. Leo clenched his fists and then released them. Okay, Scarlett. Since you don't want me to disturb you, I'll leave. Oh. Right. You don't need to prepare meals for me these days. I'll take care of it myself. 5. I heard the gentle sound of the door closing. I knew that Leo had left. After Leo left, I opened the surveillance software. In the surveillance footage, Leo kicked a stone on the roadside fiercely. As if still not satisfied, he took off his coat and threw it on the ground violently. Finally, heading haughtily, Leo stood at the door for a long time. He put his chin in his hand and was thinking about something. I knew that Leo was considering the possibility of me discovering everything he had done. Everything I had just done, including my change in attitude today, would definitely arouse Leo's suspicion. There's no denying that Leo's arrangements step by step, all his actions, were very cautious. So cautious that he almost left no handle behind. Even tampering with the skydiving equipment was done by Leo himself. In my previous life, I didn't discover Leo's conspiracy until I was on the verge of death. After being reborn, I can only induce Leo to reveal his ambitions. I'm not worried about Leo discovering anything. Even if Leo is suspicious, he will never know exactly what went wrong. Because Leo won't know that I'm someone who has already died once. He will just think that I've changed like this because I'm in a bad mood recently. Soon, when lol sorry. Leo left. I opened the insurance policy that Leo provided. In my previous life, when signing the insurance, I didn't look at it carefully. Instead, I signed it directly and gave it to Leo. This time, I noticed that in the beneficiary's position, it was distinctly Leo's name. So in fact, there were many details in my previous life that also reminded me of Leo's ill intentions. It's just that I trusted Leo too much at that time. And I didn't notice it at all. I casually signed my name. And my phone lit up. It was an urgent test report. The test report showed that some special hormones had been added to the warm water. If taken for a long time, this kind of hormone would cause people to feel anxious and irritable. I saved the report and silently picked up the tray that Leo had prepared. I poured out all the fruits and warm water. Then, let out. I put the empty tray back on the table. 6 the next day. Just as the sky was beginning to lighten, Leo appeared at my door and knocked. Why are you here so early? Scarlett. I'm just worried about you. You've been under a lot of pressure recently. This is the breakfast I prepared for you. Your favorite steamed buns. As Leo handed over the box in his hand, he looked at my expression. I know that Leo is very cautious. He's worried that everything he's done will be exposed. Maybe Leo didn't sleep all night. Which is why he came here so early. He wants to find some clues from my expression. But I'm someone who has already died once. After experiencing life and death, how could I easily reveal my emotions in front of Leo? I'm fine. Also, hadn't fulfilled say. Eva will come and stay here for a few days. Don't bother me anymore. Leo didn't find anything from my expression. And he forcefully pushed the door open. I see. Before your best friend comes, I'll tidy up for you. Saying this, Leo walked in. When he saw the empty plate on the table, Leo visibly let out a sigh of relief. He pretended to speak casually. Scarlett. Were you satisfied with the fruits I prepared for you last night? I naturally knew Leo's little thoughts. Satisfied. Those fruits had a special taste. And I ate them all up. That's good. I'll prepare some more for you. Leo didn't understand the hidden meaning in my words, and was about to start preparing fruits for me. But I stopped him. Don't bother. Just help me clean the house. I'm going to work now. If the work isn't finished, I won't be able to go skydiving. Since Leo was being so attentive, I didn't mind asking him to do something for me. Who asked him to be so good at pretending? 7 In order not to affect my work and to be able to go skydiving smoothly, Leo worked very hard to clean the house until it was spotless. Okay. You can take the insurance. I came out of the room with my phone in hand and casually placed the insurance contract on the table. On the phone, a recently sensational news report was being played. An insidier invited his wife to go on a cruise. Later, he pushed his wife into the sea with his own hands. Just to defraud a high insurance payout. Such behavior is simply inhumane. The news report was going on the phone. Next to the phone, Leo was picking up the contract and looking at it. And his expression became unnatural. Leo put down the contract restlessly and pretended to go to the water kettle casually. Scarlett. Why are you listening to this kind of news? What's wrong? It's just a news report. I looked at Leo with a half-minus smile. With a guilty conscience. Leo quickly explained. You've been under a lot of pressure recently. These negative news reports will affect your mood. Listening to fewer such news reports will improve your mood. Oh. I paused the news broadcast and turned to stare at Leo. Leo, Adunda. Do you think you will ever do something like this? For example, pushing me directly off a helicopter and then defrauding a high insurance payout with the insurance policy. A clear sound rang out. Leo had originally planned to pour me a glass of water. But at this moment, the cup in his hand fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Leo forced an ugly smile on his face. quickly picked up the broom, and lowered his head to clean up. How could that be? Don't think nonsense. How could I do such a thing? Looking at Leo's flustered appearance, I just found it a bit ridiculous. Yeah. How could you be such a heartless person? Such people, after they die, should go to hell, to taste the most vicious punishments in the world, never to be reincarnated. Leo, hello sigh. Don't you think so? Leo's face became even uglier. But he had to force a look of agreement. You're right, Scarlett. I've already tittied up for you. I have something else to do, so I'll be leaving now. After saying that, Leo no longer had his former gentle and refined demeanor and left in a hurry, like a stray dog running away in a panic. Scarlett. What's wrong with you recently? Shortly after Leo left, Eva arrived. She looked at me with a worried expression on her face. With me wanting to install surveillance cameras and having Eva come to stay, many of my actions were very abnormal. I pulled Eva into the house. I trusted Eva completely, because in my previous life, when she learned that I was going skydiving, Eva tried to persuade me for a long time. She told me that this sport was too dangerous and advised me not to try it. But at that time, I smiled and said to Eva, a long time ago, in the eyes of many people, taking a plane was also a dangerous thing. But now everyone has accepted airplanes. Everything exists for a reason. And skydiving is the same. Don't worry. Besides, I've received professional training, so there won't be any problems. Even now, I still remember the worry in Eva's eyes during our video call when I was about to leave. Eva really cared about me. We met again after 2 lifetimes. I hugged my best friend tightly. I hugged her so tightly that I could feel Eva's body stiffen for a moment in my arms. Sensing that something was wrong with my mood, she patted my back. Scarlett. It's okay. You can tell me anything that's happened. I'll help you. Okay. I'll tell you. But don't be surprised. Leo is going to kill me. What? Eva almost jumped up, but I pulled her back down. Except for the fact that I was reborn. I told Eva all my inferences, including that test report and the matter of signing the insurance policy. Scarlett. Isn't your judgment a bit too hasty? Eva bit her lower lip. Normally, having fulfilled my obsession, Leo always showed his gentle side in front of everyone. For a moment, Eva couldn't believe that the person who seemed so gentle would deliberately commit murder. Eva. We'll never know what kind of face lies behind some people's masks. Some demons put on masks, disguise themselves, and mix in among people. But these demons always have weaknesses. And sooner or later they will reveal their true colors. Whether Leo is a demon or not, we'll know if we give it a try. Then Scarlett. What do you want to do? That night, Avi and I didn't sleep a wink. We spent the whole night choosing suitable locations and installed microsurveillance cameras in the house. Then, we discussed what might happen next. 9 the day before the skydiving. In the previous 2 days, I had already made all the other preparations. And today, I was going to do the most important thing. I contacted the skydiving company from my previous life. In my previous life, because of the accident during skydiving, this skydiving company almost went bankrupt due to compensation. The person responsible was even arrested and imprisoned. I knew that the skydiving company wasn't in cahoots with Leo. Ma'am, is what you said true? I need to meet your person in charge. That day, I met the person in charge of the project. I didn't want to take any remedial measures. I just wanted them to cooperate with me to stage a play. I needed to expose all of Leo's despicable behavior completely to the public. I believed that the skydiving company that had been schemed against would be very willing to cooperate with me. 10 Because of his guilty conscience, Leo didn't show up in front of me for the past 2 days. I finally enjoyed 2 peaceful days. Until today. Today was the day I had agreed with Leo to go skydiving. Leo came to my house early in the morning. After 2 days of calm, Leo regained some confidence. Leo couldn't have imagined that there would be any way for him to be exposed. He hadn't told anyone about these things. And he certainly hadn't left any evidence behind. Standing in front of the door, Leo held a large bouquet of pink roses. Scarlett. I wish you a happy and smooth first skydiving experience. I casually took the roses and then threw them into the trash can next to me. Leo's expression froze for a moment. And he forced a smile again. Scarlett. It seems you don't like pink roses. I'll change the color for you next time. Looking at the smile on Leo's face, I felt a bit disgusted. He was smiling brightly on the surface. In Leo's heart, he must have been cursing me a lot. I guess that maybe he was thinking something like, wait until you get on the helicopter. And I'll make you die. Everything you have will be mine. TSK. I never realized before that Leo could be so patient. Like a teenage mutant ninja turtle. Then shall we set off? Scarlett? We need to do a lot of preparations before skydiving. And it will take time to check the equipment and clothes. Sure. I agreed. And I could clearly see that Leo let out a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that I would refuse. A flash of excitement passed through Leo's eyes. In Leo's eyes, I was probably already a dead person by now. But Leo didn't know that I had made all the preparations. In this skydiving, I was going to make him lose everything and be disgraced. 11 days skydiving was already confirmed. Leo's happiness was written all over his face. In Leo's eyes, I had now become walking money. On the way, Leo kept talking to me about all kinds of details. Leo wanted to pretend to be a good man until the last moment. And I just quietly watched Leo's performance. Scarlett. Let me carry your bag for you. No need. I refused Leo's flattery. If it were a couple of days ago, Leo would surely have been suspicious again. But today, the joy of being close to success had gone to his head. He no longer wanted to worry about why I was carrying such a heavy bag on my back. We arrived at the skydiving location as agreed. There, the propellers of the helicopter were whirring. Scarlett. Let's go up. Leo. I'm a bit nervous. You said. Is there really no problem with skydiving? Trust me. Everything will go smoothly. I hope so. 12. Accompanied by the humming of the helicopter, we reached a height of 10,000 meters. Throughout the ascending process, Leo was very excited. And I just coldly watched everything that was happening. Until the parachute reached the skydiving position. Leo leaned close to me and spoke softly. Scarlett. Are you afraid? What am I afraid of? That there will be an accident. There was a hint of ferocity in Leo's eyes. At this moment, Leo no longer wanted to hide the madness in his heart. It was the same in my previous life. It's just that last time, I was overwhelmed by the excitement of the upcoming skydiving and didn't notice Leo's abnormal behavior at all. But this time, I saw it clearly. I could see the excitement in Leo's eyes. He no longer wanted to hide it. Meeting my gaze, Leo felt that he had lost his composure a bit. He adjusted his expression. Scarlett. Come on. Put on the skydiving equipment. I've done some special study for this skydiving. I'll help you. No need. I took a step back. Leo had indeed learned it a lot. But he hadn't put it to good use. Leo had already tampered with the parachute. His tampering was very subtle. Even in my previous life, after being checked by professionals, they still couldn't find the tricks Leo had played. It's okay. Scarlett. Don't worry. After I put the equipment on for you, there will be professionals to check it again. Let me prepare you for your first skydiving experience with my own hands. Okay? No. I'm too nervous. I refused Leo's request. In my previous life, I would have foolishly thought that this was Leo expressing his love. But now, I wouldn't think so anymore. I knew that Leo was a cautious person. And even now he hadn't completely relaxed. He just wanted to take this opportunity to check his tampering again. I had already asked for the skydiving equipment to be secretly replaced. The originally tampered equipment had already been taken away by the relevant person in charge. Naturally, Leo wouldn't be allowed to check it again. Seeing that I was very determined, Leo blinked. Then he smiled. All right then. As long as you have a good time. 13. Just like in my previous life. The staff made the final confirmation and then opened the cabin door. When the helicopter cabin door opened, The howling wind blew on us. It made me feel a chill in my heart. Are you ready? In the wind. Leo shouted at me. I suddenly got interested and decided to play along with him in this act. I shouted loudly. I'm ready. In that instant before I jumped, Leo no longer hid the malice in his heart. That malicious gaze, even though I had seen it once before, still made my heart turn cold when I looked at it again. Go to hell. Leo whispered those familiar 3 words in my ear. Then without any hesitation, he pushed me off. Last time, I was panic-stricken. But this time, as I fell, I just calmly looked at Leo. 14 An accident occurred during the helicopter skydiving. When the rescue team arrived, they only found bloodstains and some pieces of flesh. It was said that when the news reached Leo's ears, Leo hugged his head in pain. He squatted down, burst into tears. And he stood up and rushed towards the staff with red eyes. You. It's you who killed Scarlett. Leo's crazy appearance was somewhat dramatic. Finally, heading facade outside. Several security guards pulled Leo away. Sir. Please calm down. We have already called the police. We will give you a satisfactory reply regarding the identification results and the investigation results of this matter. 15. Of course. I didn't die. This was just a play. A wonderful play specially prepared for Leo. A play to make Leo reveal his true colors. I wanted to live broadcast this play. I wanted more people to see Leo's true face. On the way back, Leo looked completely disheartened. Until we got back to my house. From the surveillance footage, I saw Leo grabbing his own hair with both hands. He squatted down and pulled at it vigorously. Then wild laughter rang out in the room. Leo, as if he had lost his mind, danced and jumped around in the room. Until the doorbell rang. The moment the doorbell rang, Leo completely changed. A feeling of sadness emanated from him. I couldn't help but sigh. It's a pity that such a person didn't become an actor. Outside the door was Ava. Leo. You killed Scarlett. Although she already knew the truth in advance. At this moment, the anger and sadness in Ava's heart didn't seem fake at all. I knew that Ava was feeling that I didn't deserve what had happened to me. I had told many of my friends and girlfriends that I had regarded Leo as my life partner. But all he thought about was killing me. What are you talking nonsense about? Leo's eyes darkened. And he took a few steps back to avoid Ava. If it wasn't you, how could Scarlett have died? It was an accident during Scarlett's skydiving. If you want to get revenge, go find the people from the skydiving company. Why are you coming after me? Leo's eyes were red, with a hint of bloodshot in them. In just half a day, he had turned into this appearance. I wonder how Leo managed to be so split in his personality. It was you. You must have deliberately killed Scarlett. You bought a huge insurance policy for her. You wanted to possess everything that belonged to Scarlett. This time, Leo's face completely darkened. Ava. Don't talk nonsense if you don't have any evidence. 16. In the camera, Ava looked at Leo's face and let out all the emotions in her heart at this moment. Leo. Scarlett was right. You're a coward. You're a bastard. You're a scumbag with a human face but a beast's heart. Scarlett was really unlucky to have taken a fancy to you. You're so inferior in your heart that you use such despicable means. You don't deserve to be a human being. With these words, Leo's expression gradually turned gloomy. Until Ava's last sentence. Leo's face completely darkened. This was what I had taught Ava to say. I knew that inferiority was Leo's greatest sore spot. Since his parents' divorce when he was a child, inferiority had been deeply ingrained in Leo's bones. Especially after being with me. I could feel Leo's inferiority complex. I had carefully protected Leo's dignity. And I had also told all my friends that no one was allowed to talk about Leo. But, at that time, I didn't know that this was something deeply engraved in Leo's bones. It just got worse and worse. Sure enough, after Ava finished speaking, Leo completely went crazy. He had just completed a murder. Even though he had made preparations, Leo was still under a great deal of pressure. Leo's emotions were already on the verge of bursting at this moment. Ava's words ignited Leo's emotions. Leo took a few steps forward and ferociously took out the phone from Ada's pocket. He glanced at the reporting that was in progress on the phone screen. And he threw the phone to the ground hard. At this moment, Leo no longer suppressed the demon in his heart. You're right. So what? 17. Scarlett. And you. All of you deserve to die. You've never looked up to me. You all think that I was punching above my weight when I was with Scarlett. Right? Leo tilted his head in the camera and laughed out loud. Don't think I don't know. Every time you looked at me, your eyes were filled with contempt. Every time you whispered among yourselves, you were making fun of me. Was it fun? Was it really fun? Don't I just not have money? Just because I don't have money, I should be a slave? I should cook, wash clothes, and clean the house every day. Like a servant? The emotions in Leo's heart had been suppressed for too long. At the moment of the outburst, his hysterical roar was terrifying. You're talking nonsense. We've never said anything bad about you behind your back. Scarlett specifically said that she didn't want us to discuss anything about you. Upon hearing this, Leo sneered. Then tell me, why did Scarlett refuse to let me touch her? Why did she make me work like a slave? Just because she could earn money. Don't I deserve it? Allah's face instantly turned red. You're simply unreasonable. Scarlett's refusal wasn't aimed at you. Scarlett told me a long time ago that she wanted to save her best for her wedding night. Was Scarlett wrong? Not to mention, Scarlett was still discussing getting married to you with us a month ago. Looking at it now, Scarlett really found an ungrateful person. As for what you said about being a slave, didn't Scarlett invest into companies for you when you first got together? Both companies went bankrupt because of you. And did Scarlett say a single word? Later, Scarlett arranged for you to work in the company. But you didn't want to. If you have the ability, go find a job on your own. What kind of person are you to take your anger out on Scarlett? Faced with Ava's series of interrogations, Leo didn't know how to answer for a moment. Finally, having fulfilled what, Leo sneered. Then you keep saying that Scarlett left me. Wasn't it okay for her to give everything she had to me? So you killed Scarlett? All of this is just an excuse for your inferiority and cowardice. Leo, I really look down on you. You don't deserve Scarlett's love. 18. So what? What if I killed her? I tampered with the parachute. Since this woman didn't cherish me, then she should die. Everything of hers is still mine. I can still have more. You. Ava pointed at Leo. Although Scarlett had said a lot before. But without Leo's admission, all these were still just speculations. At this moment, the speculation became a reality. And in an instant, a feeling of coldness overwhelmed Scarlett. Leo was a demon. A demon walking among people. I took a look at the bullet comments on the live stream on my phone. The comments now were boiling. Murdering a lover and defrauding a high insurance payout. Such despicable behavior was enough to arouse public indignation. On the bullet comments, having fulfilled my etched, there was a chorus of scolding. At the beginning, I felt a bit cold in my heart. But now, there was no such emotion left in my heart. Because it wasn't worth it. It was enough to have someone like Ava who really loved me by my side. So what? So what? Scarlett is already smashed to pieces. If you have the guts, go and sue me. Can you produce any evidence? Leo looked at Ava in front of him provocatively and spread his arms. You can only be impotently furious. You can't do anything. But just at this moment, Ava's expression calmed down. She took a deep breath. Is that so? 19. Upon hearing Ava's words, Leo instantly realized something. Leo narrowed his eyes. Do you still have a recording device? No. Then why are you so sure? I can answer that question for you. Looking at Leo in front of me, now I felt more like I was looking at a stranger. This farce should come to an end. The moment Leo saw me appear, Leo's pupils shrank suddenly. And he sat down on the ground at once, pointing at me with his finger. You want to ask if I'm a human or a ghost? I took a step forward. While Leo crawled backwards with his hands and feet, I suddenly felt a bit bored. I threw the phone to Leo. On the phone was the live stream screen. It's impossible. This can't be possible. Following the direction of the video, Leo finally discovered the micro camera in the room. I checked the room on the first day I moved in. There were clearly no cameras in the house. Leo's gaze turned back to the content on the phone, and his face instantly turned pale. It wasn't just because of the audience's scolding in the live stream. It was more because Leo knew that he had just admitted to the murder in front of everyone. Leo, please come with us. Just then, the police arrived. Attempted murder. Leo's behavior had been exposed to the public, and what awaited him would be severe legal punishment. Did you set this up? By now, even if Leo was stupid, he had already realized what was going on. Leo's eyes were red. Leo didn't understand where his perfect plan had gone wrong and been exposed. But Leo no longer had the mood to think about these things. I want you to die. Leo took out a dagger from his pocket and was about to rush forward. But Leo forgot that there were also the police by our side. 20 Leo was taken away. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted intentional homicide. This incident also attracted a great deal of attention in society. Combined with the previous case in City A where a man pushed his wife off a cruise ship, it promoted the reform of the law. But these things no longer had anything to do with me. Scarlett, you're really amazing. But how did you notice it in the beginning? Beside me, Eva quickly shook my arm, her eyes shining with curiosity. I think it was probably the will of heaven. If you don't want to tell me, that's fine. I'm not lying to you. Evil deeds are obvious, and justice will surely prevail. Maybe this really was the will of heaven. The end.